All right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and yesterday was pretty wild, wasn't it? Yesterday was pretty wild. So as always, I'm going to attempt to be a voice of reason. I'm going to attempt to just deal with this as professionally as possible. I got a little bit of news, and then we're going to go over, of course, the fake ETF pump, and ultimately, I think that things haven't really changed at all. And things still continue to look positive, and I still continue to target 42k. So hopefully by the end of this, you will see exactly why I'm so chill about all of this. And without further ado, let's get into it. Look, yesterday, Larry Fink was talking about crypto, and he says crypto, but of course he means Bitcoin. He just can't say Bitcoin for legal reasons due to the spot Bitcoin ETF application and things like that. But he was talking about Bitcoin as a flight to quality yesterday. So, I mean, times are changing, and they're changing rapidly, right? We also had Revolut, the UK's largest fintech bank with over 30 million users, launch a new release which features a Bitcoin symbol in the main menu. So we're going to continue to see adoption like this. We're going to continue to see these types of fintech companies integrate Bitcoin, because otherwise they're just going to get left behind, right? We also have this, okay? Someone knows something that we don't, because the older Bitcoins that have been held for a long time, have this strange way of suddenly starting to get moving again at around the same time every single cycle. And historically speaking, as these older Bitcoins start to move, it typically precedes a large run up in the price of Bitcoin. You can see it happened here, and with the exception of this C19 Black Swan event, where we went down first to retest the lows and then go, every single time we saw this movement and shuffling around, we actually saw a major upside for the price of Bitcoin, and we did indeed see it here. It's just we went down first to retest the lows. But it's important to point out, we've already based and retested the lows in every other case, okay? It was just here. We went straight from the lows right up, and then we had to come back and retest. But we don't need to do that because we've spent plenty of time basing just like we did in the prior times. So the argument could be made that, at least based on this one single metric, it's reasonable to expect further upside. Now, if it was this one single metric alone, I wouldn't have much confidence in this, but we do this every day pretty much, and every day I find more and more of these metrics, and they're all kind of suggesting the same thing, aren't they? They're all suggesting that this seems more likely than this. If we look at this current cycle as well, look, we are right around schedule, okay? Nothing is really out of the ordinary at the moment, and this sets us up, this is 2024, for potentially a walk to around 40, 42k, maybe even as high as 50k, by the end of this year. And that means that going into the halving next year, denoted by this green vertical line, we could probably see the all-time high challenged as early as then. So again, not something many people would have seen coming. And again, more data that speaks to, at least in my opinion and from my perspective, higher Bitcoin prices rather than lower Bitcoin prices. Of course, as a market, anything can happen. We have to be prepared for all outcomes. But the bulk of the evidence seems to be favoring this rather than this. As of yesterday, the final total of Bitcoin leaving exchanges was $250 million. The majority of coins came from Binance and Bybit. And so what does this tell you? It tells you, in amongst all of the chaos that was occurring yesterday, which we're about to get into any second now, the big boys, the people that understand the game, they were pocketing everyone else's Bitcoin. They were putting Bitcoin into cold wallets, into long-term holding, withdrawing them from exchanges, ready for the major upside that is likely just around the corner now. And so, of course, yesterday, the big news was that Cointelegraph posted a fake piece of news, citing that the SEC had approved the iShares. Remember, iShares is owned by BlackRock, Bitcoin spot ETF. And so, crazy thing to be released. There was no source. Anyone that went Googling this couldn't find anything. People were actually quite switched on to this, I think. I was looking around Twitter yesterday, and quite a lot of people were going, I don't know about that. Where's the source? Where's the source? Anyway, just moments later, they ended up deleting the tweet, and then it led to them saying that it was indeed fake news and they were investigating the situation. It's pretty interesting that Rollbit came out and said, look, Cointelegraph, was this you, right? Was this you that placed a 50k on a 50 times leverage trade right before the Cointelegraph tweet about the ETF being approved was released, only to close this long at 30,200 and change to walk away with a cool $2.25 million profit? So this is quite clearly manipulation. This is quite clearly just how the game is played. A lot of people are really angry about this. A lot of people are screaming manipulation and they need to be investigated. And yeah, whilst that's true, right? Whilst that's true, if you're annoyed by this, if you're shocked by this, if you're in the camp of people that can't really believe what's happening, then that just tells us that you haven't been here very long, okay? This stuff happens all the time, unfortunately. It is what it is. It's part of Bitcoin. There is no extreme reward without having to tolerate this kind of BS. Hopefully, as the market matures, hopefully as the market cap increases, we will see less and less of this type of manipulation. But there always is going to be manipulation because manipulation exists in every market, right? It is what it is. The silver lining, of course, is that at least we know the Bitcoin spot ETF is not priced in, okay? It's definitely not priced in, and it will pump massive when it is. If I hop into this chart, we're going to come back to this, but of course this big green pump here was on the fake news last time that GBTC had indeed been approved to convert to a spot Bitcoin ETF. And of course that pump was reversed. This time is no different. So we can say with high confidence that a spot Bitcoin ETF is not priced in, and we will at some point get it approved. And when we do, the pump will likely be spectacular. I do think there's a caveat to this, and that caveat is only if the price is not at fresh all-time highs. I do think if the price is at fresh all-time highs and then the ETF is released, I think we have to be very, very careful because it would quite likely be used as a distribution tool. And I have made this case time and time again, so I'm not going to go into that today. So in amongst all the noise, I'm going to try to do what I promised I would do, and that is deal with this in a professional manner. Let's ignore all of the noise, okay? Let's focus on the signal. And I put this out yesterday. I said, look, whilst this Bitcoin wick is pretty gnarly, okay? Whilst a lot of people are thinking, oh, biggest bull trap ever, blah, blah, blah. I said, the cycles are telling us that that wick probably gets filled over the next 2 to 3 sessions. So let's see how this plays out. Now, I'm going to get into the charts and show you this, but just before I do, I wanted to point this out, okay? Bitcoin had retraced most of its move from the 30-ish K that it reached yesterday, but it was still holding comfortably above 28K whilst the market digested what happens. And most importantly, GBTC was up over 8%. Now this is more signal. And again, I pull up this same chart. Look, I posted this on the 10th of September and I said, we have divergence, okay? GBTC moving up whilst Bitcoin was moving down. The reason I said this was significant is the last time we saw this was in early March and GBTC in orange went up whilst Bitcoin went down. And what happened thereafter was Bitcoin sharply reversed and both went on this big upside rally. The point I've been making here is institutions seem to know something about the direction of Bitcoin ahead of the Bitcoin price, which is, of course, pure signal. So I was saying at around the 10th of September when I posted this that we should keep an eye on this because this probably tells us that GBTC is going to continue up and Bitcoin is going to sharply reverse and catch it up. So hopping into that same chart, here we go, okay? Again, we saw GBTC diverging whilst Bitcoin was diverging to the downside, okay? GBTC up whilst Bitcoin's price was diverging to the downside. Since then, GBTC has continued to move up, as you can see, and most significantly, has cracked through its prior high. Since then, of course, Bitcoin, after diverging to the downside, has sharply reversed and is now starting to catch GBTC up. Isn't this exactly, assuming we continue to get further follow through from Bitcoin's price over the coming days, isn't this exactly what we saw in this neighborhood that led to a monstrous pump to the upside for both Bitcoin and GBTC? So quite comfortable in sitting here and defending this as an argument that GBTC, again, the divergence seems to have allowed us to know where the price of Bitcoin was going ahead of time. Of course, this Bitcoin pump could indeed reverse, but so long as it doesn't, then I think it's reasonable to expect a repeat of one of these types of instances. So with that said, let's hop into the chart because I also wanted to make a couple of other points here. Again, let's just be as objective as possible, okay? Let's put the manipulation out of our minds. Let's put the ETF hype out of our minds. And let's just focus on what I have been saying for the past month or so, okay? For the past month or so, have a plan and stick to it. I've been saying have a plan and stick to it. And that plan was, let's wait for a drop into this 60-day cycle low for Bitcoin, followed by a reversal, a nice big strong push off confirmed by a break of this downward sloping purple resistance line. And sure enough, there it is, okay? Perfect day 60 low, followed by a trendline break confirmation and a nice big green candle, okay? The absolute hallmark of what you would expect to see out of a cycle low, okay? Here's one right here. We put a cycle low inside the timing window, big strong push off, confirmed by a breakout, and then Bitcoin continues to do Bitcoin things. It's the same every single time. And this time, believe me, is no different, okay? Now, it's easy to get distracted by this wick. It's easy to look at this wick and say, oh no, this only happened because of the fake news. And the fake news was probably a contributing factor. There will have been people that read the fake news and just aped into Bitcoin for no rhyme or reason other than they read a tweet online. But the majority of this will have also been because shorts were getting liquidated, and this is a manipulation pump. But if we just completely ignore, completely ignore this wick in here, and we just pay attention to the candle body, what do you see? I see quite a nice sized breakout of this downward sloping purple resistance line having just made a day 60 cycle low. So there's absolutely nothing out of the ordinary here, so long as we are ignoring this wick. And that goes back to this tweet I was talking about. I said, look, whilst the wick looks pretty gnarly, it's easy to get distracted by that wick. But the cycles say it probably gets filled over the next 2 to 3 sessions. Meaning if we didn't see this wick and we just had this candle body, that's where we closed yesterday, what would you expect to come over the next couple of days? Because me personally, I would be thinking a move like this is coming, or a move like this one is coming. And if I grab a fractal from here, you know, something like this, it's perfectly within the realm of expectation for Bitcoin. If I grab this fractal from back here and put it here, look, this is perfectly within the realm of expectation for Bitcoin. Nothing out of the ordinary as far as I can tell, if we're being as objective as possible, like I've said over and over and over again. All we really have is a 60-day cycle low, which is just being confirmed, and it tells us to keep an open mind about seeing another 60-day cycle unfold to the upside. The rule of cycle theory states that unless we come down and take out this cycle low, unless we do something like this and make a new low, then we have to expect upside. Only if we take out that low do we expect the next 60-day cycle to play out in a decline into that timing window. But all the while we're above that low, cycle theory tells us that the most reasonable thing to expect is a 60-day uptrend followed by a drop into that next 60-day cycle low. So I see no reason to be bearish here. I honestly see nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that I didn't want to see. And if I only look at the body of this candle, then I say, that's a nice breakout, happy to get long here, happy to start to add these minor positions back. I often say on this channel, show me the chart and I'll tell you the news. Well, the chart said some news was due to show up, and it did. Now, it might have been fake, but again, show me the chart and I'll tell you the news. Every dip has its narrative too, right? And this pump is no different. This pump has its narrative, just like this one back here also had a GBTC ETF narrative attached to it. So again, show me the charts and I'll tell you the news. The chart said 60-day cycle low followed by a big 60-day upside cycle, and I believe that is what is ahead of us. In fact, it is malpractice to be bearish here until we sweep these lows, and that just is what it is. So I remain positive, I remain bullish, I remain long and strong, and we'll see what the market can give. Still patiently sat on the sidelines waiting to see what happens from Coinbase. So inarguably, we do have breakout retest looking for that resumption, but it's a bit weak. We'd want to see these highs taken out before we can get long, and then the stock can go below. I think that it's a very similar story for MicroStrategy. Is this breakout retest looking for that resumption? If so, we can get long. Raya, again, possible breakout retest looking for resumption, but not back above this horizontal yet, so it has a little bit of work to do. Again, I don't think there's any rush here, and Marathon, as you can see, not quite broken out yet. So thinking about doing it, isn't it? If we can get a strong green candle and a push off of here, then I think we can put a long here and get a stop below the lows. But I'm taking my time patiently. The member stock setup, I think the members will happily vouch for me that we got a great entry there. I did not go rushing into anything too insane. So we got a great entry. We're going to continue to play patient. Again, there is no rush, remember, okay? There is no rush. We just want to see that we're right rather than try to jump in and worry about it too much, right? I want to see the market tell me, yes, I'm ready to move higher. Then we'll add the long, rather than trying to say, oh no, big pumps, big green candles, just get me in. Just, you know, we don't want to be operating on emotion. Instead, we want to let the market tell us, yes, I am ready to move higher. And when it's told me that, we'll add the positions. So still playing patient, still playing cautious, but I think by the end of this week, we're likely going to be back to full exposure, or if not close to it. Here is oil. So breakdown retest, still looking for that resumption. Could go either way, but we've managed the risk by moving the stop to break even. So pretty much a free trade at this point. Gold, look, looking for breakout, retest, and resumption, but it does need to get above these highs, doesn't it? It needs to get above those highs to confirm it. So if we can do that, then I think we can add the long and it will look something like this. But for now, I'm still kind of cautious here. I would not be surprised to see this do something like this and roll over one last time. So anything can happen, break above there. And like I said, we could think about getting long, possibly by playing the minor positions. But the junior miners, look, not broken out yet. Senior miners break out, but kind of weak, right? So we'll see. If we can get something like this, then again, we can get long. But at the moment, it's not quite as entertaining for me as I'd like it to be. Here's the S&P 500, kind of still sticking to the plan, right? It's still kind of doing what we thought it would do, follow this red squiggle, break out, and if it breaks out, then we'll get long. The NASDAQ, again, still not broken out, but thinking about doing it, and if it does, of course, we'll get long. And the Dow, look, right into resistance, about to be right into resistance. So again, maybe something like this and go, and we can get long there. Russell 2K seems to have made a nice double bottom here, so move up to this pink downward sloping resistance line, break out of there, and I think it's go time. Here's a Dixie. So we've got a clear invalidation, haven't we? Break out this downward sloping red resistance line, and we're probably going to see resumption higher. But if we can continue to be held down by this, continue to roll over, then we will see a lower Dixie price. It would probably need to be catalyzed by the euro dollar breaking out. So again, secondary attempt here into resistance. Can it finally do it this time? So overall, as you can see, hopefully, nothing has really changed, right? The Bitcoin price is behaving the way the Bitcoin price is expected to behave. The stock market's still working their way up to resistance, and if they can break the resistance, then we have a party on our hands, right? We have a show on our hands. We have a chance at running to all-time highs towards the end of this year. So a little bit more patience, a little bit more letting the market speak for us, and then we'll be able to know what to do. I'd be highly surprised if I don't have a bunch more positions by the end of this week. I really expect to add a whole heap of minor positions over this week, and likely 1 or 2 stock indexes at the least, I would have thought. I've just remembered I wanted to flag this, okay? I wanted to flag this. This is actually really important. So I'm going to mark something here. Solve inversion. We need to solve the inversion right here, okay, for this cycle low, this half cycle low. Now, if you've watched my tutorial for how to trade cycles, then you'll know what an inversion is. If not, I'm just going to quickly explain it. Occasionally, and it doesn't happen very often, I've hardly seen it at all in over about 10 years of trading cycles. I've hardly ever seen this, but it does occur occasionally. And a cycle inversion is when the half cycle low becomes a new cycle. Okay, so if we look at this, we've got nice clean 60-day cycle low, 60-day cycle low, potentially a nice clean 60-day cycle low. And if what happens now is we get a clear half cycle low, move up, cycle low, and then go again, then we can happily say, okay, this cycle is a bit wonky because the lowest low is in the middle of the cycle, and that's just because it's Bitcoin, and Bitcoin does weird stuff sometimes, right? Hopefully that's what we can say. But we do need to solve this inversion, and what I mean by that is I need to be sure that this is actually not a cycle inversion, meaning that we've forced a early day 30 cycle and now we've got a new 60-day cycle ahead of us. If that's the case, then this isn't actually a 60-day cycle low, and this would be a half cycle low, telling us to expect another cycle low in around 30 days. So it can be kind of difficult. It doesn't really matter because we've probably caught the move here, we've probably caught the breakout, and either way, we'll either get a half cycle low show up and then a clear 60-day cycle low, or we'll get a 60-day cycle low. We might have to do some adjustments in the counting, but I'm going to leave this solve inversion here in the middle because we do need to solve, or at least I do. I need to solve whether or not this is just a wonky half cycle low or whether we have got a cycle inversion, and that means that we will need to mark this as the cycle low and then adjust the counts going forward. Now, the only way to solve this, okay, the only way to solve this is to let more candles play out. Now, like I said, these are super, super rare. I can think of less than 10 of these that I've seen over the decade odd of trading cycles. But cycle theory states, and if you go and watch the tutorial, you'll understand this, that what we have here is a cycle low followed by a failed cycle, okay? Meaning this cycle low undercut the actual cycle low. So what we should have seen is a reversion followed by a lower low. And that would tell us that we had a declining shaped cycle into that cycle low before we go. Because it's Bitcoin, because it probably just wanted to wick the most critical level on the chart, which is this 25k range break, maybe that's all that was, okay? A wick to the downside, and then we recover and continue this consolidation cycle because it is net sideways, and therefore that is a 60-day cycle low, and we're going to move up from here, okay? Now, again, I think that's probably what's going on, and if that's the case, it will become very, very obvious over the next 60-day cycle. But like I said, technically speaking, this is a failed cycle that quickly recovered. This tells me that there's a possible cycle inversion here, and therefore we might have to move to an alternate count where we end up marking this as a day 30 cycle inversion, meaning the cycle low has been forced at the half cycle point, and therefore we might have to adjust our count moving forward so that this comes in by about 30 days, and then we go from there. So not something that happens very often, ultra, ultra rare, but it can occur. It is covered in that how to trade cycles tutorial video. I'll link that at the end of this video for you. if you're interested. For now, it doesn't really change anything, because whether this is the 60-day cycle low or whether this is the half cycle low at day 30, we should still see another 30 odd days play out before the next cycle low shows up, whether it's a half cycle low or not. And then, like I said, if this is a true 60-day cycle like I think it is, then it will become blatantly obvious on the chart. But if we're having full transparency, if I'm being 100% real with you, we do need to solve whether or not that was just a short-term wobble or whether that is a cycle inversion. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm going to leave this solve inversion here in the meantime, and hopefully that wasn't too confusing for you. In the meantime, what a week, and I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. Until next time, take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.